One sentence from Megyn Kelly, just a question detonated like a bomb across Buckingham Palace. Is Meghan Markle really 44? Within hours, the internet melted down, royal aides went silent, and Meghan herself vanished from public view. What began as harmless speculation suddenly looked like an international scandal. Missing years, altered records, and a duchess whose entire timeline just cracked wide open. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began like any other broadcast. Megyn Kelly behind the microphone, calm, sharp, and ready to dissect another headline. But this time, her voice carried something different, a glint of accusation masked as curiosity. If the documents are accurate, she said, then how old is Meghan Markle really? That single question spread across social media like wildfire, igniting one of the most relentless investigations the royal world had ever seen. Within minutes, the clip went viral. Viewers replayed it, dissected it, slowed it down, analyzing every inflection of Meghan's tone, searching for hidden meaning. It wasn't just a question about age, it was a challenge to everything Meghan had built. Her identity, her image, her truth. Inside Buckingham Palace, panic spread faster than rumor. Royal aides exchanged frantic calls. Senior courtiers whispered in corridors, asking if anyone had prior knowledge of inconsistencies. Public relations teams were instructed to observe silence, a phrase that, within royal circles, usually signals an internal crisis. Behind the gilded walls, the questions struck nerves far deeper than expected. The monarchy had endured scandals before: affairs, divorces, betrayals, but never a deception that could rewrite official royal documentation. The very foundation of royal credibility trembled. Online, chaos erupted. Hashtags like #MeghanMystery and #Royal Cover-Up trended worldwide. Forums filled with comparisons between Meghan's old interviews and her documented milestones. Some argued the issue was invasive, another chapter of unfair scrutiny against her. But others saw Meghan's words as the spark that exposed something the palace itself had ignored. It became a digital trial with no jury, only endless speculation and viral evidence. Every photo, every date, every small inconsistency in Meghan's story became ammunition for those who believed the Duchess wasn't who she said she was. Within hours, the question stopped being about numbers. It became about trust. Because in the monarchy, age isn't just a detail. It's a record, a lineage marker, a truth tied to history itself. If Meghan's timeline was wrong, even by a few years, what else could be false? It wasn't simply a celebrity rumor anymore. It was a potential constitutional embarrassment. For the royal family, whose power relies on perception and precision, this rumor was radioactive. Then, as the internet spiraled with theories, a photo surfaced of a grainy group shot from the early 2000s that no one had paid attention to for decades. At first glance, it looked harmless. A collection of smiling students from Northwestern University's salsa club, frozen in nostalgia. But when observers looked closer, something didn't add up. Every person in that photo was born in the early 70s, all of them except Meghan. According to her official birth year, she should have been nearly a decade younger. Royal analysts began whispering that this wasn't just gossip, it was the first crack in a carefully painted portrait. Because that photo, that one seemingly innocent memory, didn't just question her age, it questioned her entire story. From Hollywood to Windsor, the timeline began to look suspiciously constructed. Whispers turned to accusations, and the pressure on the palace mounted to verify what was real. But Megyn Kelly wasn't finished. She had one photograph that would make even Buckingham Palace's archivists lose sleep. An old group shot from a college salsa club shouldn't rewrite royal history, but this one does. Every smiling face belongs to a student born in the early 1970s, except Meghan, whose birth year is supposedly 1981. The math collapses, and so does her carefully curated origin story. It began when a single post appeared on Reddit late one night, tucked between conspiracy chatter and casual gossip threads. A user claimed to have found a forgotten photograph buried in a digital archive from Northwestern University's student clubs. Within hours, the post exploded across social media. The image was of 6 students standing arm in arm after a salsa night in the early 2000s. But what made it extraordinary was the timeline. Every name tagged in the image, except one, matched graduates born between 1972 and 1975. The outlier was Meghan Markle, allegedly born in 1981. When internet sleuths overlaid the enrollment records with the photo's date, the discrepancies became impossible to ignore. She should have been years younger than the people in that photo. Instead, she looked like she belonged exactly where she stood. Experts were immediately drawn into the frenzy. Forensic analysts compared the photograph's digital signature, confirming that it hadn't been edited or artificially generated. Metadata revealed a timestamp consistent with the early 2000s, years before Meghan's official Hollywood debut. But what really set the internet ablaze were the human details. Viewers noted the maturity in her features, the confidence in her posture, the quiet authority that didn't match a 20-year-old undergraduate. "She doesn't look out of place," one researcher commented. "She looks right at home." That single remark became a rallying cry for skeptics who had long suspected her biography had been polished into fiction. Soon, journalists began pulling enrollment data from Northwestern's public archives. Names, ages, and, of course, lists were meticulously compared. The timeline collapsed in on itself. According to the university's records, the Salsa Club was formed during a period when Meghan, by her official birth year, should have barely entered college. Yet the people beside her in that photo were seasoned graduate students. Some already teaching assistants, others long graduated. Nothing aligned. It was as if she had stepped sideways through time, appearing in a life stage that wasn't hers. The idea was too wild to ignore and too specific to dismiss. Social media detectives took the obsession further. They freeze-framed the photo, analyzing the fashion, the decor, even the make of the disposable camera visible in a mirror's reflection. Every detail screamed early 2000s authenticity. But the revelation went beyond mere aesthetics. It challenged the legitimacy of Meghan's entire backstory. Threads titled "The Salsa Slip" began trending, and within 24 hours, thousands of comments dissected the image like forensic evidence. The name stuck. The Salsa Slip wasn't just a photo anymore. It became a symbol of a timeline unraveling before the public eye. For those who believed in the official narrative, it was a nightmare. For those who doubted it, it was vindication. And for the palace, it was chaos. Because once a single photo cracks the surface of a royal's carefully managed story, the flood that follows is unstoppable. Once the photo surfaced, journalists expected Meghan's team to dismiss it, yet what they did instead made everything worse. In crises, silence is strategy. But Meghan's silence felt like confession. No denial, no statement, only vanished posts and phone calls, redirected. Behind palace doors, aides whispered that Megyn Kelly had hit a nerve. When the controversy first erupted, the world expected an immediate rebuttal, perhaps a defiant press release or an elegant statement carefully crafted by her public relations team. But none came. Instead, Meghan's representatives went dark. Her scheduled podcast appearances were quietly canceled, her upcoming interviews postponed indefinitely, and her public calendar suddenly emptied. For a woman known for commanding every headline, her disappearance from the conversation spoke louder than any defense ever could. It wasn't just absence, it was avoidance. And in the eyes of the public, avoidance looked a lot like guilt. Within 24 hours, the silence spread beyond her personal channels. Official photos of Archie and Lilibet, once proudly displayed across royal news outlets, began disappearing. Public access to the family's digital archives was restricted without explanation. Journalists who had previously been in Meghan's inner circle stopped returning calls. One palace insider later revealed that King Charles himself had demanded clarification after internal communications suggested that Megyn Kelly's claims might not be entirely baseless. It wasn't just the monarchy's reputation on the line, it was the credibility of their entire vetting process. But while Meghan retreated, Megyn Kelly advanced. The seasoned broadcaster smelled blood in the water and moved in with precision. On her primetime segment, she promised documented proof that would, in her words, end the debate once and for all. Clips of the segment went viral before it aired. Audiences waited with bated breath, convinced that whatever Kelly had uncovered would confirm what everyone secretly feared, that the Duchess's carefully built image was beginning to collapse under its own weight. The palace, caught between loyalty and damage control, issued no response, and that silence only amplified the storm. Meanwhile, social media turned forensic. Digital detectives began comparing Meghan's old photographs with her recent appearances, feeding images into facial analytics software that could estimate age through bone structure and skin patterns. The results, though unverified, spread like wildfire. Every analysis hinted at the same uncomfortable possibility, that the timeline the world had accepted for years might have been wrong all along. Twitter threads, YouTube breakdowns, and Reddit investigations multiplied overnight, each one dissecting the smallest inconsistencies like courtroom evidence. Brands took notice. Sponsorship deals once worth millions were quietly re-evaluated. PR insiders leaked that major collaborations had been paused pending clarification. What began as a tabloid whisper had now evolved into a full-scale crisis of credibility. The woman once hailed as a symbol of modern royalty was being stripped of that aura piece by piece, and her silence, once a form of control, was now the very thing tearing her image apart. Then came the paper trail, the one document nobody imagined she'd dare to edit. Every royal document is sacred until Meghan Markle changed hers. When Archie's birth certificate was quietly amended, her own name disappeared, replaced by a title. That single edit ignited suspicions that legal records were her favorite mirrors. She looked into them and rewrote the reflection. At first, it seemed like a clerical footnote, a harmless adjustment buried beneath the endless paperwork of royal life. But in the United Kingdom, birth certificates are more than pieces of paper. They are public records, permanent evidence of truth. Once issued, they are rarely altered, and when they are, the reason must be compelling. Yet, Meghan's edit came not through a bureaucratic correction, but through deliberate legal channels initiated weeks after Archie's birth. The original document, listing her full name, Rachel Meghan Markle, was suddenly revised to read only Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. No explanation was given, no precedent was cited. Just an edit that quietly erased her personal identity from her own son's record. Observers were stunned. In a family defined by tradition, such a move was unheard of. Royal historians immediately drew comparisons to how other royal mothers were listed. Catherine, Princess of Wales, Diana, Princess of Wales, all retained their full names. Meghan's omission was unique. The palace claimed it was a personal preference, a formality in line with Her Royal Highness's status. But critics saw something more calculated. Why remove her name entirely? What was she trying to hide or distance herself from? Online investigators quickly connected the dots. If Meghan was willing to modify a royal birth certificate, what else might have been adjusted throughout her public timeline? Threads emerged, comparing her edit to past document irregularities from her Hollywood years union registrations, agent contracts, and credit listings where names, dates, and even job titles had been subtly altered over time. In isolation, they were footnotes. Together, they formed a pattern of rewriting. The media seized the story, and the debate grew louder. Was it an act of royal conformity, or an attempt to obscure inconsistencies in her personal record? Even palace insiders admitted that the change raised eyebrows at the highest levels. For critics already suspicious about Meghan's background, this edit became proof that official documentation could be molded when it suited her narrative. And when Megyn Kelly aired her next segment titled "Paper Doesn't Lie Unless Someone Edits It," the scandal broke into full view. Kelly laid out both versions of Archie's certificate side by side, pointing out the deliberate erasure of identity and the uncanny timing of the amendment. The conclusion was clear. Meghan's public story had officially entered the realm of manipulation. The palace, cornered by growing questions, issued a defensive statement labeling the edit as standard protocol. But by then, few were convinced. Once trust in royal paperwork falters, so does faith in everything it represents. If a mother could vanish her own name from a legal record, what else within the royal narrative might have been conveniently rewritten? The world began to wonder whether this was a single anomaly or a signature move in a far greater pattern of deception. If official records could shift, what about the visual ones? The photographs that shape her entire public identity? Most celebrities drown in old photos. Meghan's past looks surgically erased. No awkward teenage snapshots, no college candids, just curated perfection. The missing years became louder than the visible ones. What began as a harmless curiosity soon evolved into a full-scale digital investigation. Online sleuths, equipped with little more than determination and free time, began tracing every known photograph of Meghan Markle from her school years through her rise in Hollywood. What they found wasn't a collection of forgotten memories, but a pattern that felt eerily deliberate. Identical images appeared under different timestamps, supposedly taken years apart. The same outfit, same expression, same pose, yet captioned to fit entirely different chapters of her life. When these inconsistencies began stacking up, it no longer looked like coincidence. It looked like a curation. Archived yearbooks that should have offered a glimpse into her teenage years suddenly became digital ghosts. Pages missing, group photos half-scanned, and entries redacted for privacy. But privacy wasn't the issue. It was precision. Every fragment that could age her, date her, or position her in a specific timeline seemed to have vanished. Former classmates interviewed by journalists couldn't even recall her exact graduation dates. Some remembered her briefly, others claimed she had transferred early, while a few insisted she was part of a completely different academic year altogether. Each testimony contradicted the next, forming a fog of uncertainty that only deepened the mystery. The contrast between Hollywood and the monarchy became striking. In royal archives, documentation is sacred, unalterable, traceable, and preserved for centuries. But in Hollywood, history bends easily under the glow of PR management and digital control. Photos can disappear, birth dates can shift, entire narratives can be rewritten with a single press release. Meghan had mastered that art long before she ever set foot in the palace. Her life before royalty didn't look like an ordinary journey through school and career. It looked like a carefully storyboarded production, one where only the approved moments survived. Megyn Kelly's investigative team pushed further. They analyzed metadata and the digital fingerprints hidden within photos and discovered mismatches that couldn't be explained away by simple file transfers or reposts. Images labeled as early 2000s carried metadata signatures from years later. In some cases, the software used to process those images hadn't even existed at the time the photos were supposedly taken. The implications were staggering. It suggested that Meghan's past wasn't just selective, it had been actively edited. Her public identity was not a scrapbook of genuine moments but a reconstruction designed to align with whatever story she needed at the time. As the evidence piled up, a chilling theory emerged. Meghan hadn't begun manipulating her image. After marrying into the royal family, she had been refining her timeline for years. Every inconsistency, every missing page, every perfectly timed reappearance of an old photo painted the same picture. This wasn't chance, it was choreography. And that realization changed everything. The missing years weren't forgotten, they were deleted. But nothing fuels suspicion faster than a courtroom, and Meghan's next legal fight dragged every hidden receipt back into daylight. When Meghan sued her half-sister for defamation, she expected silence. Instead, the case became discovery hell. Lawyers unearthed timelines, IDs, and employment records that didn't line up, and suddenly the age rumor was entered as evidence. It began as another strategic lawsuit. One Meghan believed she could easily control. Samantha Markle had spoken publicly about their strained relationship, calling out inconsistencies in Meghan's self-narrated past. The Duchess, determined to protect her image, filed a defamation suit, confident that the legal system would reinforce her version of truth. But in trying to silence her sister, Meghan opened a door that could never be closed. Once the filings hit the public record, the scrutiny she had fought so hard to escape came roaring back, only this time under oath. The courtroom became a battlefield of paper trails and precision. Samantha's legal team requested complete educational verification, birth documentation, and employment histories to prove the fictional elements Meghan had allegedly presented in her public narrative. What should have been a simple procedure turned into chaos. Dates clashed, names overlapped, and, most damningly, official forms displayed conflicting information about her academic years and professional background. Lawyers who initially approached the case as routine suddenly found themselves questioning how such inconsistencies could exist within royal-adjacent documentation. Meghan's defense team scrambled to rationalize the contradictions, but every explanation seemed to open another hole. When those inconsistencies reached the judge's desk, the tone of the proceedings shifted sharply. Legal observers noted that the court began pressing for explanations that sounded less like public relations talking points and more like forensic examination. Meghan's credibility, once her strongest weapon, was now her greatest liability. And as if fate had conspired to magnify her misfortune, excerpts from the hearings began leaking to the press. The leaks painted a picture of a woman caught between two versions of herself, the one she sold to the world and the one buried in documents that refused to align with her story. Megyn Kelly seized the moment. She dedicated an entire episode of her show to the unfolding scandal, calling it Under Oath and Out of Time. The episode tore through the internet like wildfire. Kelly didn't just report the contradictions, she dissected them. Each segment exposed a different inconsistency, weaving the courtroom filings with her previous investigation into Meghan's alleged age deception. The timing was surgical, the delivery merciless. Within 24 hours, the narrative that Meghan had fought to suppress was no longer rumor. It was a legal record. The public perception shifted overnight. What had once been dismissed as online gossip now carried the weight of court documents. The world watched as the Duchess's version of reality unraveled, line by line, in front of legal authorities who cared little for palace image control. Hollywood, always alert to scandal, began to recoil. Producers and publicists who once celebrated her as a symbol of modern empowerment quietly distanced themselves. Contracts stalled, collaborations paused, and whispers of unreliability circulated behind closed doors. For Meghan, the courtroom wasn't just a venue, it was an unmasking. Each revelation peeled back another layer of the persona she had so meticulously constructed. What began as a defamation claim against her half-sister transformed into a public inquest into her own authenticity. Every denial sounded weaker, every explanation more desperate. The lawsuit had turned into a self-inflicted wound, and no amount of royal protocol could stop the bleeding. But Kelly's next revelation didn't come from a courthouse. It came from inside Meghan's own production files. Buried in leaked Netflix production notes were timestamps and casting records dates that didn't just contradict Meghan's age, they annihilated it. Someone inside finally said, "She was never that young when we hired her." It started with an anonymous email sent to one of Megyn Kelly's producers. No name, no return address, just a digital envelope of files marked confidential, internal production records. The message inside was short but devastating. Check the insurance documents, the truth is right there. When the team opened the attachments, what they found could have shattered any celebrity. But for a royal duchess tied to global institutions of legacy and truth, it was catastrophic. The documents came straight from Netflix's production archives, and they contained something Meghan could never have imagined escaping the vault. Each production file included standard paperwork, cast contracts, insurance forms, and payroll records. But the shock came from a date buried deep in the metadata. Instead of the official 1981 birth year, Meghan had publicly maintained, the internal system listed 1,975. Not once, but repeatedly across multiple departments. From pre-production insurance documents to scheduling sheets, every timestamp aligned with the earlier date. What made it worse was that these weren't isolated errors. They were consistent, system-wide entries logged years before Meghan ever met Prince Harry. It wasn't gossip anymore, it was administrative truth. When Kelly's team cross-referenced the files with employment verification forms submitted to unions, the puzzle fit too perfectly to be coincidence. One anonymous staffer, who later confirmed working on the suit set, privately told Kelly's producer, "We all knew she wasn't in her early 30s when the show started. She carried herself like someone older, someone who'd already lived another life." That quiet admission struck a nerve. It suggested the age rumors weren't born out of malice, but memory people who had witnessed the reality before it was rewritten. The fallout rippled through Hollywood. As word of the leak spread, reporters began demanding answers from Netflix. At first, the company refused to comment. Then, quietly, without statement or acknowledgement, certain public records and database metadata on their platform began to change. Search results for Meghan's older projects showed subtle edits. Dates compressed, credits shifted, timelines tightened. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots, cached pages, and archived data showed the differences instantly. To digital investigators, this wasn't cleanup, it was confirmation. The public reaction was explosive. What had once been dismissed as an internet conspiracy was now tangible evidence. There were receipts, paperwork, timestamps. The kind of evidence that could destroy even the most polished narrative. Megyn Kelly's next broadcast aired clips of the internal documents, her voice razor sharp. "These aren't rumors anymore. These are official forms, and they tell a very different story." Inside the industry, whispers grew louder. Seasoned actors, producers, and casting directors began acknowledging what they had long suspected, but never dared to say on record. Age manipulation wasn't new in Hollywood, but Meghan's case crossed a line. Because this wasn't just about preserving youth, it was about deceiving royalty. As one insider put it, lying to a casting agent is one thing. Lying to a king? That's treason by glamour. The revelation marked a point of no return. Hollywood's digital fingerprints had exposed the truth that Meghan had worked so hard to bury. And if the film industry could produce evidence of this damning, what could the palace, the institution built on record-keeping and bloodline precision, uncover next? With Hollywood receipts exposed, only one institution remained that could confirm the ultimate truth: the British monarchy itself. For centuries, the Crown's vetting process was impeccable until Meghan. When investigators traced her documents, they found quiet corrections and sealed files. For the first time in modern history, palace record keepers refused to comment. The British monarchy had built its reputation on precision. Every name, every title, every marriage, every birth archived, verified, and safeguarded by an institution obsessed with order. Background checks were exhaustive. From bloodline confirmation to international legal clearances, nothing escaped scrutiny. The Crown's vetting office operated with military discipline, ensuring that anyone who entered the royal circle did so under the weight of absolute transparency. But in Meghan's case, something unprecedented occurred. Files that should have been public were locked. Citizenship records, once accessible to historians, vanished from official indexes, replaced by restricted entries labeled confidential for security reasons. For an institution that prided itself on clarity, this sudden secrecy reeked of quiet panic. The first whispers emerged from inside the palace itself. A mid-level staffer, speaking anonymously to a trusted journalist, hinted that Meghan's paperwork had raised red flags early on. Allegedly, discrepancies were flagged in her background documentation during the initial engagement review, particularly surrounding dual citizenship filings and the verification of her birth certificate. Yet, rather than delaying her entry into the royal family, the inconsistencies were brushed aside. It was optics, the source claimed. The palace couldn't risk another scandal. They wanted progress, diversity, a fresh image, so they let it slide. As the story spread, the notion of ignored red flags sent shockwaves through the establishment. If true, it meant that the royal family, known for its meticulous record-keeping, had knowingly bypassed its own protocol. This wasn't a simple administrative error. It was a breach of tradition at the highest level. Insiders whispered that both King Charles and Prince William were furious when they learned how deep the lapse ran. Reports claimed Charles demanded an internal audit of all documentation connected to Meghan's royal induction. The results, however, were never released. What followed was even more suspicious. The lead investigator on the review quietly resigned 2 months later, citing personal reasons. Meanwhile, public distrust swelled. Online forums buzzed with speculation that Meghan's citizenship approval, which had been fast-tracked before her wedding, was never properly vetted. Petitions began circulating across the UK, demanding the palace issue a formal statement on what exactly had been sealed and why. If every royal must adhere to tradition, one critic argued, then why was Meghan exempt? The calls grew too loud to ignore, forcing the palace press office to release a sterile, 3-sentence statement affirming their full confidence in the Duchess's background and integrity. But the damage was already done. The statement felt like a deflection, not a defense. And as the uproar reached global proportions, Megyn Kelly returned to the story that had started it all. This time, she wasn't dissecting photos or birth certificates. She was exposing the institution itself. For generations, the Crown's shield of credibility has been unbreakable, she said in her closing monologue. But one woman walked through its gates and rewrote the rules. Meghan didn't just fool the public, she fooled the monarchy. Those words landed like a hammer blow, echoing across newsrooms and dinner tables alike. The idea that a single individual could manipulate an empire built on scrutiny was almost unthinkable. Almost. But Kelly wasn't content with the exposure. She wanted an explanation. And that's when Meghan herself finally broke the silence. Cameras rolled as Meghan dialed into a live interview meant to reclaim her narrative. Instead, Megyn Kelly's final question, "Which version of you should we believe?" left her frozen. The Duchess blinked, smiled, and whispered, "You already decided." The broadcast had been billed as Meghan's redemption moment. Weeks of silence, mounting backlash, and the relentless investigations had cornered her into a corner she could no longer ignore. The world tuned in, expecting a fiery defense, a statement powerful enough to silence every critic. What they got instead was an unraveling. The tension was palpable from the first second. Meghan appeared composed, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying exhaustion. Every question from Kelly felt like a blade carefully sharpened, precise, deliberate, unavoidable. Viewers could sense it. This wasn't going to be another soft interview. It was going to be an ambush, wrapped in politeness. As Kelly walked her through the timeline, the tone darkened. Each inquiry grew more specific, every inconsistency brought to the surface. Meghan tried to redirect, to cloak her responses in charm and deflection, but it didn't land. The pauses stretched longer. The smile faded. When asked about the conflicting dates in her official biography, she shifted in her seat. When confronted with the altered legal documents, she insisted it was standard protocol. But Kelly wasn't letting her escape this time. Her team had prepared for weeks, and now they had something undeniable. With a subtle nod to the control room, Kelly gestured to the monitor behind her. On screen, two documents appeared side by side, one from Netflix's internal files, the other from Meghan's official royal record. 2 birth years, 2 different versions of the same woman. The audience watching at home felt it instantly. The silence, the weight, the collapse. Meghan's lips parted, but no words came. For years, she had curated every photo, every interview, every detail of her public life. But she couldn't edit this moment. Within minutes, social media detonated. The hashtag number Meghan exposed Meghan dominated global trends, fueled by clips of that frozen silence replayed from every possible angle. News outlets ran emergency segments, dissecting her expressions frame by frame. What began as an attempt to salvage her image had transformed into a televised reckoning. Behind closed doors, royal aides scrambled into damage control, issuing vague statements about ongoing misinformation campaigns while quietly coordinating crisis meetings at the palace. Charles and William reportedly refused to comment, choosing distance over defense. And yet, beyond the chaos, something deeper lingered. For all the noise, the documents, the leaks, one truth became painfully clear. In the digital age, editing isn't just for photos. It's for lives. Meghan's story, built on control and reinvention, had finally collided with the one thing she couldn't manipulate: time. The image she spent years perfecting was no longer hers to command. It belonged to the public now, dissected, debated, and exposed. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.